Now, this progressive good government reform movement tended to be economically conservative, socially liberal, and Republican, fighting against Tammany and the urban mob of the Democratic Party. And a defining piece of its philosophy was a really fundamental belief in the top-down power of science and rationality to conquer society's ills, as opposed to the more bottom-up populous stance of Tammany. Now, since the mid-1800s, democratic political machines had run New York City and most other major American cities. Now, European cities had grown relatively slowly, with, semi-adequate time to build a professional government structure and a relatively non-political civil service before the seas of humanity were swept cityward by the tides of the Industrial Revolution. But American cities had no such opportunity. Boomtowns, one and all, they operated not on the codes of bureaucratic procedure, but on the laws of the jungle, the fast buck and the fixed bid. And no American city grew larger or faster or more chaotically than New York. Now, the only power that the working class, the immigrant poor had in that free-for-all was their sheer numbers and the votes that those numbers translated into. The Democratic Party became their refuge, providing government jobs, Christmas turkeys, tenement apartments with decent rental rates, burial money, whatever was needed to guarantee votes and prevent uprisings. Growing up in the West End of Boston in the 1920s and 30s, my grandfather used to talk about how Mayor James Michael Curley used to do this sort of stuff. Apparently there was someone in the Craffey family somewhere that was connected to him, and Curley used to leave milk and eggs out on his back porch for people that were connected in the neighborhood when it was needed during the Depression. Now, on the other hand, Curley was known as the Rascal King, and while he was still mayor, was actually sent to prison for bribes and corruption. Complicated characters, these democratic machine types. But the main thing that Tammany provided in New York was jobs, particularly for the politically connected folks, but for very large numbers of people. And of course, a few dollars for themselves, for the leaders. There's a quote, "The papers and some people are always ready to find wrong motives in what us statesmen do." Tammany man and state senator George Washington Plunkett, who was actually the namesake of the first George Washington Bridge across the Hudson River, said, "If we bring about some big improvement that benefits the city, and it just happens as a sort of coincidence that we make a few dollars out of the improvement, they say we are grafters.